You went to bed last night feeling perfectly fine. No tightness in the chest, no spinning room, nothing that resembled a warning. And yet, while you were under the covers, there's a real chance the supply of oxygen reaching the inside of your skull was being quietly throttled. Not by a disease, not by a pill you're taking, by exactly how your head, your spine, and your shoulders were arranged the moment you closed your eyes. Stay with me on this one. Because what I'm going to lay out has nothing to do with what you ate, how much you walked yesterday, or which prescription you filled this month. And I'd be willing to bet your physician has never once devoted a single appointment to it. I'm Dr. Emily Chen, and over the years I've spent reviewing the cardiology and neurology literature most relevant to people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. One quiet pattern has shown up over and over, and almost no one in mainstream medicine talks about it candidly. The way you sleep, the rotation of your neck, the direction your torso is facing, the slope of your spine, is actively shaping how much blood reaches your brain through the night. Every single night. Here's the part that tends to stop people in their tracks. Stroke risk doesn't sit at a flat baseline across the day. It surges in the morning hours after waking by roughly 49% between 6 a.m. and noon, riding on what cardiologists call the morning blood pressure surge. That spike is not random. And what your body went through in the hours just before that window, the position you were in, how your circulation was being shaped overnight, whether your heart and brain were actually recovering, that determines how exposed you are when the surge lands. Now, I know what some of you are about to say. I've slept the same way for 40 years, and I'm still here. I'd ask you to hold that thought for the next 18 minutes. I'm going to walk you through 6 sleep mistakes, ranked from quietly harmful all the way to the genuinely dangerous. And then I'll lay out 2 evidence-supported positions that could be working in your brain's and your heart's favor, starting tonight. But first, do me a small favor. Tell me in the comments which of these you are. Someone who sleeps on their back, someone who sleeps on their side, or someone who sleeps face down on their stomach. I'm going to come back to all 3 throughout the video, and your answer is going to land in a very direct way before we're done. Before we count down, let me give you the why. Because once the why clicks, every recommendation that follows will make sense without you having to memorize it. In your 20s and 30s, your blood vessels are forgiving. They stretch, they bounce back, they quietly compensate for almost any sleep posture you give them. Wake up with a stiff neck, and that's the end of the story. Things shift after 60. Arterial walls get a little stiffer. The small vessels feeding the brain lose flexibility. The pressure inside the skull becomes more sensitive to body position. And the autonomic system that normally keeps your blood pressure tightly regulated, that gets a little slower to respond, especially overnight. Sleep researchers call the healthy nighttime pattern blood pressure dipping. In a healthy sleeper, blood pressure drops by 10 to 20% overnight. That dip is protective. It's part of the recovery your cardiovascular system is supposed to be doing while you rest. But if your sleep position is squeezing the wrong vessel, narrowing the wrong airway, or directing blood the wrong way, that protective dip never fully shows up. And what fills the void is a much less friendly pattern of overnight strain. That's the framework I want you carrying into the rest of this video. Now let's get into it. One quick thing first. Drop your name and where you're tuning in from. I do read every reply, and I genuinely like knowing who I'm talking to today. Mistake 1. Sleeping flat with no head elevation. Mistake number 1 is sleeping completely flat with no head elevation at all. Let's start with one that sounds so harmless it's almost suspicious to call it a mistake. Lying perfectly flat. No pillow or just a thin one. Body level with the mattress. Spine theoretically aligned. Physical therapy blogs love it. Mattress brands market around it. But there is a piece of the picture nobody is showing you. When you lie completely level, and especially after 60, blood doesn't redistribute the same way it did when you were 35. With gravity no longer assisting, cerebrospinal fluid, the cushion your brain rests in, can pool. Pressure inside the skull edges up. The small cerebral vessels that already carry years of subtle wear are now under slightly more load than they were built for, and they sit that way for 7 or 8 straight hours. A study in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine found that even a modest tilt, as small as 15 degrees of head-of-bed elevation, produced measurable improvements in intracranial pressure and overnight blood flow dynamics. Modest input, real change. Here's the symptom most people misread completely. You wake up at 3 in the morning with a dull throb behind the eyes or at the base of the skull. You shrug, blame age, drink some water, maybe take an over-the-counter pill, and roll back over. But what if that headache is your brain telling you the pressure has been too high in there for hours? The fix isn't dramatic. A 15-degree elevation of the upper torso. I'll show you exactly how to set that up safely later in this video. But first, something more specific. Mistake 2, stomach sleeping. Mistake number 2 is stomach sleeping, the position that quietly twists everything. This one surprises almost everyone the first time I bring it up. Stomach sleeping feels harmless on its face. You're not pressing on your heart, you're not crushing your lungs, you're just lying face down. So, what's the issue? The issue is your neck. You can't breathe with your face buried straight in the mattress, so what your body does, automatically, is rotate your head to one side. And because most of us settle into the same physical patterns night after night, it's almost always the same side, every time. Now think about what that actually means. Your neck is rotated up to 90 degrees, sustained for 7, 8, sometimes 9 hours at a stretch. Running along either side of your cervical spine are 2 vessels called the vertebral arteries, and they feed blood directly to your brainstem, your cerebellum, and the parts of your brain that handle balance, breathing rhythm, and coordination. When the neck is twisted that far for that long, those arteries can develop a slight kink. Picture a foot resting on a garden hose. Flow doesn't shut off entirely, but it's restricted. And restricted flow into the brainstem 8 hours a night, year after year, isn't something your body just shrugs off in your 70s. Work published in the Journal of Manipulative and Physiological Therapeutics confirmed that extreme cervical rotation measurably reduces vertebral artery blood flow velocity. The original study was looking at chiropractic positioning, but the underlying anatomy applies straight to a sustained sleeping posture. And there's a second issue with stomach sleeping that hits the breath. Your rib cage is pinned against the mattress, so every inhale is fighting compression. The diaphragm can't fully drop. You never quite reach full tidal volume, the deepest breath your lungs are actually capable of. Lower oxygen per breath, plus a partially restricted artery, both happening at the same time, every night. A 35-year-old compensates without noticing. A 68-year-old with even mild hypertension is accumulating something quietly in the dark. If this is helping, drop a 2 in the comments. It tells me people are still with me and finding value in the breakdown. Mistake 3, stacking pillows under your head. Mistake number 3 is stacking pillows under your head. Let's stay around the neck for one more, because this next mistake comes from a place of good intentions and ends up in a very similar place by a totally different mechanism. Stacking pillows, 2, 3, sometimes 4 of them under the head. People do this for understandable reasons: acid reflux, sinus drainage, snoring, breathing trouble at night. And a small amount of elevation does help with some of those issues. I'm not waving that off. But there's a line where elevation tips into harm. When the head is pushed too far up, the chin tilts down toward the chest. That forward bend, what clinicians call cervical flexion, is exactly the angle that compresses those same vertebral arteries we just talked about, except now from the front. There's also a third vessel in this conversation that almost nobody mentions: The internal jugular vein. The jugular is the brain's primary drainage line. It carries used, deoxygenated blood back down to the heart. When the neck is bent forward sharply for hours, that drainage channel gets partially squeezed. Blood empties from the skull more slowly. Pressure inside the head builds, and the brain's overnight ability to wash out metabolic waste is reduced. What does that look like in real life? You wake up after a full 8 hours and feel like you got 4. Heaviness behind the eyes. Brain fog that takes the better part of the morning to lift. You're not lazy and you're not getting old too fast. Your brain may have been waterlogged overnight. The correction is simpler than people expect. One pillow, just one, ideally a contoured memory foam pillow that supports the natural curve of your neck instead of forcing your head into a tilt. A lot of patients report their morning headaches start clearing inside a week of making just that change. One pillow. That's it. While I'm thinking about it, if this is changing how you think about your own sleep, hit the like button. It actually helps this kind of practical content reach more people who are waking up exhausted and don't know why. And tell me in the comments, how many pillows do you sleep on? 1, 2, 3, more? I'm curious how common this habit really is. Mistake 4. Right side, sleeping with a cardiovascular history. Mistake number 4 is right side sleeping when you have a cardiovascular history. Now we're heading into territory that catches a lot of people off guard, because side sleeping in general is treated as one of the better positions, and for most people, it is. But, and this is a real but, the side you face matters more than people realize. Your heart sits a little left of center in your chest. It has a natural orientation. When you lie on your right side, gravity nudges it slightly out of its preferred resting position. More importantly, your body weight presses down on the right side of your torso, and the inferior vena cava, one of the largest veins in the body, runs through that exact region. The vena cava has one job. It returns blood from everything below the waist, the legs, the abdomen, the digestive organs, back up into the heart. When you compress that vein by lying on the right side, the return flow slows. Your heart now has to work against reduced filling pressure, pulling harder than it should just to fill each chamber. A young, healthy heart compensates without missing a beat. But for someone over 60 managing borderline cardiac function, mild heart failure, or long-running high blood pressure, the heart is already operating closer to its ceiling. Adding nightly resistance on top of that is like running a car engine 10% harder every night for years. The wear adds up. The European Journal of Heart Failure published findings showing that patients with heart failure naturally and instinctively avoided sleeping on the right. Their bodies recognized something uncomfortable before their conscious minds could put a name to it. That instinct is worth listening to. If you commented earlier that you sleep on the right, this section was written with you in mind. Stay with me. The solution at the end addresses this directly. Mistake 5. Tightly curled fetal position. Mistake number 5 is the tightly curled fetal position. Knees pulled up to the chest, shoulders rolled inward, chin tucked. For a lot of people, particularly women over 60, this is the default. It feels warm and protected, like the body is folding inward to hold itself. Emotionally, I get it. Physiologically, 3 things go sideways at once. First, the lungs are compressed. The rib cage can't fully expand, so every inhale comes up a little short. Tidal volume drops. Across an 8-hour night, oxygen saturation in the blood ticks downward bit by bit. Second, the vessels running through the hips and behind the knees, particularly the popliteal vessels, get bent and partially squeezed. Circulation to and from the lower limbs slows down. If you already swell at the ankles or have sluggish leg circulation, this position quietly makes both worse. Third, the neck is flexed forward. Everything we already covered about vertebral artery flow and jugular drainage applies again, this time as a whole-body version of the same compression pattern. Research in respiratory physiology and neurobiology has documented that sustained spinal flexion during sleep measurably reduces tidal volume. Multiply a 10% shortfall across every breath of an 8-hour night, and you're looking at a meaningful amount of oxygen that never reaches an already aging brain. If this is you, if you curled up tonight the way you have for 30 years, the adjustment doesn't have to be dramatic. Slip a body pillow between your knees. Open the hip angle slightly. Small change, real improvement. Mistake 6. Late eating and alcohol before bed. Mistake number 6 is eating late or drinking alcohol close to bedtime. This last one wraps up everything we've covered and amplifies it, and it's far and away the most socially common mistake on this list. Dinner at 7:30, a glass of wine in front of the television, lights out by 10. That's the standard weeknight for an enormous number of adults over 60. Here's what's actually happening inside you while you sleep after that scenario. After a heavy meal, the body redirects a real volume of blood to the digestive tract. That blood comes from somewhere, partly from the brain and heart. In a younger body, the rebalancing is seamless. In an older body, with stiffer arteries and a slower autonomic response, that shift can produce small dips in cerebral blood flow, quiet moments where the brain is mildly undersupplied. Now, layer alcohol on top. Alcohol is a vasodilator. It relaxes the vessel walls, which drops blood pressure. Your body senses the drop and overcorrects by tightening vessels and pushing pressure back up. So pressure goes down, then up, then down, then up, riding a small wave through the night. In vessels already carrying some plaque or age-related fragility, that constant oscillation is a stressor on the arterial walls. The American Journal of Hypertension published work showing that even moderate alcohol consumption within 3 hours of bedtime disrupts the natural overnight blood pressure dip we talked about. Without that protective dip, cardiovascular strain through the night climbs noticeably. What does that look like in your own life? You wake up at 2 a.m. with your heart pounding, maybe slightly damp. You blame a vivid dream and reach for water. What you may have actually felt was your circulatory system trying to steady itself through a wave of pressure swings it wasn't quite equipped to ride out gracefully. The recommendation is straightforward. Finish eating at least 3 hours before sleep. If you drink, give yourself a 4 to 5 hour buffer between the last drink and lights out, and take a slow 15-minute walk after dinner. Not a workout, just movement. That single habit kicks digestion into gear, evens out blood sugar, and gives your cardiovascular system a chance to settle before you go horizontal. Position 1, left side sleeping position number 1, the one your brain actually prefers, is left side sleeping. This is, hands down, the most evidence-supported sleep position for cardiovascular and neurological health in adults over 60. When you sleep on the left, gravity works with the natural orientation of your heart instead of against it. The inferior vena cava sits on the right side of the spine, so left side sleeping completely unloads compression off that vein. Blood returns from the lower body smoothly. The heart works less. Circulation steadies. But here's the discovery that genuinely changed how sleep researchers think about position. About a decade ago, scientists identified what's now called the glymphatic system. Picture it as the brain's overnight cleanup crew. While you sleep, cerebrospinal fluid pulses between your brain cells and flushes out metabolic waste, including amyloid beta and tau, the same proteins that accumulate in excess in the brains of Alzheimer's patients. A landmark paper in the Journal of Neuroscience found that this glymphatic clearance is most efficient when you're on your side, and that the left side appears to offer slightly better drainage geometry owing to natural brain asymmetry and the direction cerebrospinal fluid flows. So left side sleeping isn't only about tonight's circulation. It's about whether your brain is consistently clearing the waste products that, over decades, can compound into cognitive decline. If you've never been a side sleeper, use a full-length body pillow against your front to keep you from rolling. Tuck a smaller pillow between your knees to keep the spine neutral. Give it a week. Your body adapts faster than you think it will. Position 2. Back sleeping with 15-degree elevation. Position number 2. For those who genuinely cannot sleep on their side, bad shoulder, hip arthritis, decades of back sleeping habit, is back sleeping with your upper torso elevated 15 to 30 degrees. Not just 3 pillows under the head. The whole upper body needs to be on a gradual incline. A wedge pillow does the job. An adjustable bed frame does it even better. What this accomplishes is real. It uses gravity to assist blood return from the lower body. It eases the intracranial pressure pooling that flat back sleeping creates. It keeps the airway more open, improving oxygen delivery overnight. If you also slip a small pillow under the knees to preserve the natural lumbar curve, you arrive at what sleep researchers call a zero-gravity posture, where pressure is distributed evenly across the body and no single vessel or joint is bearing extra strain. This setup is especially useful if you deal with mild sleep apnea, recurring morning headaches, swelling in the legs, or a doctor who has told you your blood pressure stays high even while you're asleep. Sleep environment and monitoring position alone isn't the whole story. Your sleep environment determines whether your cardiovascular system actually recovers overnight or just labors through it. Temperature. Keep the bedroom between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. A cooler room helps your core temperature drop, and that drop is the biological cue for deep, restorative sleep. It also pulls blood pressure down naturally overnight. A room that's too warm keeps the heart rate elevated and traps you in shallow sleep stages where almost no real cardiovascular recovery happens. Light and screens. Blue light from phones and tablets after 9 at night suppresses melatonin and pushes back your entry into deep sleep. Your brain's glymphatic cleanup runs hardest in deep sleep. Disrupt deep sleep, and that cleanup quietly stops. Put the device down. Pick up something printed instead. Noise. Sounds that don't fully wake you still interrupt deep sleep through brief micro-arousals you'll never remember. Heart rate spikes for a few seconds. Cortisol ticks up. Consciously, nothing happened. Your vascular system, however, registers every one of those events. A white noise machine or a pair of soft earplugs takes that variable off the table entirely. And one tool genuinely worth considering, an overnight pulse oximeter. It's a small clip that tracks your blood oxygen across the night. If your oxygen routinely dips below 92%, that's a conversation worth having with your doctor. It can flag sleep apnea, circulatory issues, or early respiratory problems, all of which materially raise stroke risk. And it's the kind of data your physician will actually want in front of them. Here's what I want you taking away from this. Your stroke risk does not punch out for the night when you fall asleep. The hours between midnight and dawn are, in many ways, the most important cardiovascular hours of your day. And the position your body sits in across those hours is something you have direct, immediate, zero-cost control over. Pick one item from this list, just one. Roll over to your left side tonight. Tilt your head of bed up 15 degrees. Stop eating 3 hours before lights out. Trade the stack of 3 pillows for one contoured one. None of those is a small intervention. Repeated nightly, any one of them compounds across weeks, months, and years. I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me. Which change are you going to make first? Honestly, reading your answers helps me understand what people are actually dealing with, and it might help someone else watching recognize a pattern they've been ignoring for far too long. If this video gave you something your last appointment didn't, tap the like button and pass it along to somebody who needs it. A spouse, a parent, a sibling over 60 who's been waking up with headaches nobody can explain. And go ahead and subscribe, because next week I'm covering the 5 early morning symptoms cardiologists treat far more seriously than most people realize. They show up in the first 20 minutes after you wake up. They're routinely written off as just aging, and they may actually be your body sending a very specific warning. You'll want to be there for that one. Until then, sleep with intention, protect your brain, and look after yourself. I'm Dr. Emily Chen. See you on the next video.